Since his introduction as the main killer in Friday the 13th Part 2, Jason Voorhees has both terrified and entertained audiences for decades, becoming synonymous with slasher films. And, as with big franchises, comes merchandising opportunities. From action figures to video games, t-shirts, and of course, comic books. Welcome to Friday the 13th, a comic history. Despite the Friday the 13th series beginning in 1980, the comic adventures of Jason Voorhees wouldn't begin until 13 years later in July 1993. Starting at Top Comics, the company famous for their sports cards, the machete-wielding maniac saw his first introduction in the pages of the 4th issue of Satan 6, a series connected to Jack Kirby's Secret City Saga. This book tells the story of Odious Commodious, a demonic figure who sends his agents on missions to cause chaos and collect souls for the devil. During the aforementioned 4th issue, Odious decides he wants to replace one of his minions and summons Jason Voorhees, only to have the Crystal Lake Slasher attack him. This brief cameo lasted for 5 pages, with Odious transporting Jason into the events of Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. And this 3-issue adaptation of the film sees Jason's physical body destroyed, and after having his heart consumed, is then able to hop bodies via a slug-like creature, until such a time he can be reborn in the body of a Voorhees. And, much like the film, we get the cameo glove shot of Freddy Krueger. The next story wouldn't come for 2 years, until October 1995, with the release of the 3-issue run of Jason vs. Leatherface. Not only is this the first story that is disconnected from the previous 2, it also shows us a different side to Jason as, after arriving in Texas, comes face to face with the chainsaw maniac Leatherface and his family, who actually end up taking Jason in, where Jason exhibits sympathy for Leatherface. And upon witnessing how badly Leatherface gets treated, Jason begins killing those around him, which prompts a fight between the two horror icons, with Jason simply being knocked out and later returning to Crystal Lake. And with the end of that run, this would bring Top Comics' dealings with Jason Voorhees to a close with a total of 7 issues. It would then be a full 9 years before Jason saw the printed comic page once again. May 2005 would see the release of the Friday the 13th special, a one-shot written by Lady Death creator Brian Pulido. This story focused on a pair of siblings, Laura and Miles Upland, who inherited the Crystal Lake area. Their intention is to turn the once camp into a resort and sell timeshares, but the likes of Jason Voorhees have made those efforts difficult. Laura hires a band of mercenaries to try and take out Jason, which goes about as well as expected. Next would be the 3-issue Friday the 13th Bloodbath in September 2005 and would run through November. This would be a more classic-style Friday tale that sees 10 teenagers arrive at Camp Tomorrow, which happens to be next door to Camp Crystal Lake, having taken jobs to clean it. In typical fashion, debauchery ensues, and this means our favorite hockey mask killer shows up and carnage promptly begins, which leads to Jason pretty much ripping through everyone, leaving only 2 survivors by the end of the story. 1 month after the start of Bloodbath saw the release of another one-shot titled Jason X Special. This book serves as a sequel to the movie of the same name and tells the story of a bioengineer named Kristen, who suffers from an incurable disease and thinks Jason's regenerative capabilities may be the key to saving herself. This leads to the unleashing of Uber Jason, which means carnage ensues and no happy endings. Following this, in February 2006 was a very interesting crossover. The 2-issue story Friday the 13th, Jason vs. Jason X. Once again taking place in the Jason X universe, a salvage team heads to the remains of the Grendel, the main ship from the Jason X movie. During this mission, they unknowingly resurrect the original Jason Voorhees, which catches the attention of Uber Jason as the two are drawn to each other, leaving a pile of bodies along the way where the 2 Jasons inevitably clash. The final story to be released from Avatar Press came in June 2006 in the one-shot Friday the 13th yearbook. This served as a follow-up to Friday the 13th Bloodbath, seeing the only surviving girl as the other survivors succumb to his wounds at the start of this story, captured by a secret organization that wishes to use her as bait to lure Jason into a trap in hopes of capturing him. But, as we all know, there is no simply capturing Jason Voorhees. and Jason also proves that it's only a matter of time before he gets you. This would conclude Avatar Press's journey with the series, totaling 7 issues, with the franchise finding its next home with a publishing imprint created by an industry titan. Beginning their run in 2007, Wildstorm made its debut with the 6-issue miniseries simply titled Friday the 13th. Much like Bloodbath, the story takes the more traditional approach, telling the story of teens hired as camp counselors to prepare Camp Crystal Lake for its reopening. Also, one of the newer additions to the story is the exploration of Jason's curse, which was tied to a massacre of Native Americans on the land Crystal Lake now resides. Starting in the same month as the previous story's final issue, Friday the 13th Pamela's Tale was a 2-issue story that gave us the history on Jason's mother and the original killer in the first Friday the 13th. This story is played out in conjunction with events from the first movie, only this time from the outside perspective rather than the first-person perspective, along with her youth from when she was pregnant with Jason, learning of her abusive spouse, and the realization that the counselors were not her first victims, all leading up to the beginning of the first film's climax. Starting 1 month later in September 2007 was Friday the 13th, How I Spent My Summer Vacation. This was a story comprised of 2 issues and places the book's narration on a boy named Davy Faulkner, a kid with a head deformity, much like Jason, who was sent to the camp and is terrorized by other kids. It seemed to only get worse as Jason Voorhees shows up, but as it turns out, Jason related to Davy and decided to take him, as well as Davy being pursued by a crooked sheriff, hell-bent on killing the boy who witnessed him murder other counselors in an attempt to kill Jason. Along the way, Davy comes to find that he and Jason may be more alike than he thought. Wildstorm continued to pump out stories, with the next book also following the very next month, this one being a crossover for the ages. Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash tells a 6-issue epic battle between these 3 horror icons. This story is also a pseudo-sequel to Freddy vs. Jason, as it sees references to that film as well as returning characters. In this book, Freddy once again enlists Jason's assistance and gets the hockey mask killer to steal the Necronomicon, which, upon using its evil powers, grants Freddy the ability to invade the real world but still maintain his dream powers, meaning he can warp reality. Ash Williams has to do whatever it takes to recover the Necronomicon and stop Freddy and Jason. Running between this book from January to February 2008 was the 2-issue story, Friday the 13th Badland. This is a story that has 2 similar events separated by hundreds of years, but running parallel to one another, and returns to the concept of Jason's curse, once again being of Native American background. Both stories feature a group of characters trying to escape a blizzard who comes across a place of shelter. The difference is, one is the more classic form of slasher storytelling, with people getting into promiscuous relations, leading to a face-down with Jason, while the other, in 1750, sees hunters come across a Native American woman breastfeeding her baby, which leads to a horrific scene followed by the woman's husband returning and getting shot in the face. However, he doesn't die and begins acting in a similar manner to Jason, in which he dispatches his wife's attackers. 2 months would then pass and we'd see another one-shot titled Friday the 13th, Abuser and Abused. This would tell the story of Maggie, a girl that suffers physical abuse from her boyfriend, causing bruising, which classmates make fun of her for, and all adult figures in her life claiming she's just looking for attention and don't care for her one way or another. This causes her to make the decision to murder her dad and stepmother before having her boyfriend take her out to Crystal Lake, where she attempts to kill him too. However, he manages to overpower her, and it looks as if he may kill her instead, until he meets his end by Jason Voorhees. Maggie then faces down with the slasher of Crystal Lake, and at first fights with Jason, which proves to be futile, before making one last effort to survive by telling Jason her story, hoping to appeal to any humanity he may have. This also proves to be futile. Which brings us to the final story in Wildstorm's run. Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash, The Nightmare Warriors was a 6-issue miniseries that followed up on the events of the previous Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash. This tale sees Freddy and Jason resurrected by the United States government and hopes to use their supernatural gifts for their own benefits. This of course means they screw up, and it's up to Ash to once again battle with the evil slashers. Along the way, Ash encounters a group called the Nightmare Warriors, a group comprised of those who have survived encounters with either Freddy or Jason. This sees the return of characters from across both franchises, including Tommy Jarvis, culminating in an all-out brawl in a spectacular fashion. This would bring Wildstorm's run to a close with a total of 25 issues, making it the publisher with the most releases under its belt. This would also be the end of the Friday the 13th comic franchise at the time of this recording, but like Jason Voorhees sitting at the depths of Crystal Lake, awaiting those unlucky individuals who would step onto his land, the Friday the 13th comic franchise too waits for the day it can resurface again. And I would like to thank you for watching and your continued support. These particular videos take a while to put together, and if you enjoyed this video, I ask that you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And if you want more videos like this, don't forget to check out both my Power Rangers and Mortal Kombat: A Comic History.